Hey, so I'm excited to give you a presentation here that I've worked quite a bit on. I've actually changed a number of times from direct feedback I've received because I want this to actually be helpful to you. I want it to be helpful, and I want it to help us think. And really, that's the point of this session that I've presented now. I've presented this specific session, like I said, in fairly with quite a bit of differences in what I added and removed and that sort of thing. I've presented it in London, Berlin, Bologna, and I'll be presenting it as well in Munich and Amsterdam. And it's one of those sessions that I actually think you could probably see it more than once. If you have seen it at one of those conferences, thanks for attending and watching again. And my hope is that each time it'll help you think a little bit more, because I think that a lot of times in our industry, we don't actually think about the why before immediately applying the what. And that's especially true in an AI era because we're all rushing to create agentic, things that'll solve PPC. And I think being a human and thinking is still pretty important. So, you've probably done that. If you're watching this, that means you probably care about learning. So good for you. You're ahead of people who are not, pursuing knowledge and trying to learn. But what I want to tell you is that none of what you have learned technically, so all of the things that you have these scripts that you want to build, and you have exactly when to use TROAS or when to test it and how to use experiments and everything in your Google Ads account. Okay, so you are like the best Google Ads person there is, and I'm telling you, none of this matters unless, all right, unless you solve the actual problem preventing business growth. So let me illustrate here. Let me illustrate. I want to share a couple of businesses, and juxtapose them against each other. So I want to start by comparing two businesses, all right? So first of all, we have the business HexClad. If you're in the US, you're probably familiar with HexClad. Not as much around the world, but that's growing. So HexClad, cookware, very well known in the US. They have done a phenomenal job. A lot of that is because, frankly, of Gordon Ramsay's immediate authority that he adds, right? So cookware, one of the most, if not the most recognizable chef of probably of all time to people living, right? So Gordon Ramsay is the face of HexClad, sells it. That's a huge deal for them. But that's not the only thing. I mean, they have an extensive paid influencer network. They do a fantastic job with influencers. They just get a lot of free viral traffic as well. These pans look good, and oftentimes that means that they're being used in videos by people all over Reels and that. They have an amazing marketing program across all channels. So they're doing a lot with creative, and they're driving demand and SEO and all this stuff and email. And then, at least in the US, if you have an ad in the Super Bowl, it probably means that you're either fairly well known or you have lots and lots of money to burn. And HexClad clearly has been doing a significant amount of advertising and marketing, and they actually had a Super Bowl ad this year in which Pete Davidson, Gordon Ramsay, it was pretty humorous. I thought it was very well done. But all this idea of, when I say HexClad, especially in the US, most people know what HexClad is. Let's compare this with Pots and Pans R Us. I mean, you've probably heard of Pots and Pans R Us as well. No? Well, yeah, that's because I made them up. Thank you, Gemini, for the logo. So Pots and Pans R Us is, even though they're a made-up brand, they're very similar to many brands that us agencies have have ever worked with, especially smaller agencies. I mean, it's kind of like strategy. What strategy? My by the way, my favorite here is number 6. This, like, hey, what are you guys doing for SEO? And it's like, well, we paid someone for do follow links, right? Those don't exist, all right? And again, this is like no fault of the owners, the fake owners of Pots and Pans Are Us, but just an idea of, this is often the sort of business that we have going up against a HexClad, right? And so let's just say both of these businesses call you up and they say, hey, we want you to scale paid search advertising for us, right? So my question to you that I want you to ponder, and we'll answer at some point, my question is, who do you think is going to exponentially scale? If you're the Google Ads person and you're running advertising and HexClad or Pots and Pans R Us comes to you, who do you think is going to exponentially scale with Google Ads PPC? Because here's what our temptation is. It's with, like Olivia says, right? Let's get technical. All right, that's our temptation as search marketers. Brand comes to us, they're like, here's a Google Ads account. We want you to scale this. And immediately we're like, you got it, boss. So we hop in the settings and we change the settings and we add some experiments and we add in our favorite scripts. We do all this stuff, and this is actually a live footage shot of all of us, right? We're just getting all the spreadsheets. We love our spreadsheets. We're getting the spreadsheets out, and we're doing all this technical stuff. And meanwhile, the brand performance is starting to go down, but we're like doing all of the Google Ads stuff right, all right? We're doing the things we've learned. In fact, we have like 9 arguments for why our way that we're doing this is like the better way based upon what the internet says. And honestly, we're probably right in terms of technical sense. And yet, your boss or client isn't really that impressed, right? Because, well, performance isn't improving. So I think we need to pause and say, where does growth actually come from? Where does growth actually come from for us paid search marketers? I think this is crucial to understand. Is the elements of business growth come initially from like business fundamentals being set correctly in order to allow for scaling and true growth? Like a couple of examples of that, right? I mean, this is simplistic, but like your offer for your product needs to match the product. You need to have enough product in stock. So if you actually sell with advertising, you can actually ship that amount of product. Your product positioning, which tends to not be controlled by you, needs to be in place. There's a lot that has to do with like the financial side of a business. A business isn't going to scale if the finances aren't making sense, right? So there's a whole lot of stuff that doesn't touch marketing at all. This is my point in the business fundamentals thing. There's a whole lot of stuff that has nothing to do with PPC advertising that can allow or prevent a business from scaling, okay? So that's one element of business growth, is just a lot of like the business needs to be set correctly. But then the business can be set correctly, and if no one ever hears about it, then like you're still not going to scale, right? There's probably a ton of good businesses. There's a local like wrap shop down the street from me here at my office in Billings that I really love. And the reason why you don't love them as well is because you've never heard of them, because they're just a small like local thing from Billings, right? So that's not a product issue. It's not even a product market match. It's not even a product market fit issue. I think they do a great job with product market fit. It's just like no one knows about them. And by the way, they're okay with that. So again, like, but that's part of scaling. It's just like eyeballs, like top of funnel stuff. Getting a billboard in New York City, right? Like all of this stuff where typically it's more on the getting the eyeballs on your good product set up to scale. And then none of that's going to matter if you don't like actually convince your market. And this is where something like product market fit can come in as well. So you need a great product, you need eyeballs on that product, but then you also have to work to convince people of that product. And this is the thing with like scaling and business growth, there's a whole lot of interplay in these elements. And within this is where we PPCers fit in, which is in the realm of paid search and shopping ads. Our job is to capture demand as efficiently as possible. And I think there's a lot of things that like I've written and spoken on this before, others have as well. And so there's a lot that can be gotten into. And I'd even, like, if there's parts of this that you disagree with or want to chat about more, I would love to chat with you on LinkedIn and Twitter, PPC Kirk, right? Hit me up and let's have a public conversation, actually, because sometimes that's really helpful for others to see who have the same questions and conversations as you do. But in my opinion, paid search and shopping, and then increasingly as we see LLMs like ChatGPT, increasingly these are still within the realm of capturing demand. Just a quick reasoning for that is because in order for someone to think of the idea of communicating, I'm interested in this sort of product to solve this sort of problem, right? And that can even be a 2-word thing, or it can be a 4-paragraph back and forth to ChatGPT. But there's still some element of that person needs to have that awareness in order to even communicate the question. And the only way you're gonna broaden that is by increasing the number of people who ask that question. And so again, like that's like you're just capturing demand. And then at some point, like again, we're still talking about growing scale. Then, there's still this realm of convincing your market. But here is really the crucial thing to walk away from with this section is that you as the paid search marketer, you do not control growth. You contribute to growth by capturing demand efficiently, but you are not controlling growth. And this is really crucial because therefore the expectations on you and the power that you hold is different whether you control or contribute. So here's an analogy I have. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. I think I would have the analogy of, I think it's like a vacuum cleaner. And this was actually an analogy shared by one of my team members. And I just loved it so much. And so think of it like this. You as a paid search marketer, you like own a vacuum cleaner business, all right? And so your job is to go into a room, see the demand, let's call it the demand, the dirt, whatever, and like vacuum it as efficiently as possible. And there are different ways to do this. And a good vacuum cleaner, right, is trying to think of ways to become more efficient. So maybe they buy a better vacuum that can suck harder, all right? Maybe they buy a bigger vacuum, right? Maybe, this is the real big brains among you. Maybe it's an AI vacuum, right? Because that solves everything. So you have this AI thing to capture demand. That's what the platforms tell you, right? Like AI will solve it. But all this does is help you capture that dirt and demand more efficiently. It's not going to actually scale anything. How you actually scale is by adding more rooms on. And I think that this is a perfect analogy for what paid search actually is. And so let's go back and close the loop on these two companies, these two brands. Because when HexClad comes to you and says, we want you to scale Google Ads, we want you to scale paid search, what they're actually saying is, hey, we have all of these rooms. We just bought like 4 hotels. We have all these rooms. We want you to capture the demand dirt as efficiently as possible. And, here's our budget. You can buy more vacuums. You can buy better AI vacuums, whatever it might be. And as we add more rooms, you can scale this capturing of demand. Pots and Pans R Us is not telling you this. They are telling you, without realizing it, through no fault of their own, but they're saying their expectations are, hey, we have this tiny little room and kind of this broken vacuum. Can you please come in and add more rooms for us? All right. They're not even telling you to be more efficient with the room they have. They actually want you to increase the number of rooms, the business. And that's impossible because it's literally not what you have the capability of doing as a search marketer. And this is why I think it is essential that we understand this. And that is that throwing technical channel expertise at a business problem is not going to solve the problem if the channel isn't the problem. I'm going to say that again, because this is the crucial point to understand. If you have all of this technical channel expertise, but there's an actual business problem, then you digging in and trying to solve technical channel whatever with testing and all this stuff is still not solving the business problem, and your business is still not going to grow. You're not going to be successful. So this means you can be the greatest Google Ads practitioner in the world and you can still get fired. And I think it's really crucial to understand that. And we're going to talk some about that and what we can do about that. Okay, so us technical PPCers, we contribute to growth. That's what we've learned. We don't control growth. Well, then who actually does? Well, what I want us to take away from this is that increasingly our job isn't just to be a search marketer. It is to be a search marketer. We need to be good at that. But it is also to be a C-suite whisperer. Some of you may remember this reality TV show. I mean, this is surprising, right? If this reality TV show were a person, it could now drink because we're 21 years ago, which is just blows my mind. But there was a reality TV show called The Dog Whisperer. And the idea was that this guy somehow, it was almost like he could read the minds of these dogs because he was so familiar with how they thought and just kind of understood this at some core level. So even though, they don't have the same language, he could still communicate with them somehow and get the outcome he desired. And in just the same way, we need to learn how to be C-suite whisperers. Just having technical skills is not good enough in this day and age. So as we think of this idea of the C-suite, by the way, C-suite is like executive team, so CMO, CTO, CEO. I tend to agree with the line of thinking like Taylor Holiday has communicated here before. I love this tweet of his. I think it so captures this idea that really there's only one person in the entire organization who does control all of the elements of growth that we're talking about, which is the CEO. That by the way, I'm not necessarily saying CEOs are overpaid or underpaid or whatever, but I am saying at some level, because the CEO is the one with like literally the ability to like primarily the one who is responsible for growth or not growth. I think that's part of why they tend to be paid so highly, is because it really, everyone else contributes, the CEO controls. But, and this is where it gets a little tricky too, because I do understand that like we have people we're reporting to, maybe a head of growth, which I don't think should be a thing. I think head of growth is the CEO, but sometimes that's like some position that companies make up under a CMO. Maybe it's like the VP of digital, whatever it might be. Like whoever your boss is kind of who I'm thinking of with the executive team. Just do keep in mind this idea of the CEO. And I think wherever we can get a seat at the table with the actual growth controller is essential. Or at the very least, making our next level, like the CMO, maybe making them look good. By the way, just as a quick note, if you still don't agree with this, like I made this flow chart for you so you could determine whether the CEO is actually the only one who controls growth. All right, so there you go. But all that to say, it is the executive team within a brand, and this may be your bosses, or if you're a client, they're your boss, but it's through your clients. It's kind of the same thing. The executive team of the C-suite control the growth. And so we as paid search marketers need to learn not just how to be technical, but also how to communicate. And so that's what I want to talk about next. And the first way we're going to do that is, ironically, by being really good and technical, by mastering our channel. I think this is an important note, is if you are going to do good at your job, it's not just about being able to sell your skill, let's say sell a lower skill level to your C-suite team. So I'm not just talking about making stuff up. I'm saying you actually need to be good at PPC, and you need to be able to communicate well and help guide growth. One of the reasons I say this is just I've found that a great PPCer is just at some point limited in their ability to contribute to growth. We've talked about that. At some point, you can be the best PPCer in the world, and yet if the product sucks, at some point, you're not going to be able to increase growth. But what I've found is you can be the worst PPCer in the world, and you could substantially harm a business because you can lose them a lot of money by making poor choices in the UI. So keep that in mind. Okay, so as we're thinking like about this technical, you might be asking, because you're a good marketer, because you're watching this and you really care, like how do you know if you're good at your job, if you're a good technical PPCer? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to think through, and some people might have all of these responses about, well, do you follow this, or do you know what sort of bidding things? I think it's a lot simpler than that. I think you ask yourself, am I increasing traffic from the right audience within my channel limitations? I really think that this is the core, because at the core, at our final point, we as PPCers do not control the ability for a person to purchase or not. We are finding, as efficiently as possible, we are finding the right audience who are most likely to purchase. That really is our job. So if you're not doing that, if you're not sending the right audience within your channel limitations, or if you're overbidding, whatever it might be, then like absolutely fix your marketing. That's kind of how you can know. And so let's talk about quantifying then your channel contribution. Okay. So first be good at technical marketing. And then as you're good at technical marketing, be able to communicate what this looks like for the CEO, for the C-suite. So the simple way to say this is, are you and the CEO in agreement about what impact PPC has on business growth? If not, that's a great place to start looking. So a question here would be just simply, are you increasing traffic from the right audience? We talked about that. So if you are within the channel limitations, but there's no efficient increase in performance, I think that's a signal oftentimes to be able to use that to help communicate and show the C-suite that now we have done our job on the PPC land. We have been as technically skilled as we possibly can. So the problem isn't there to fix. And this is important because if they think the problem still is there to fix and you disagree on your technical ability to accomplish that, you're going to get fired. And that's why this is so crucial to be able to communicate. And again, just to be very clear, I'm not talking about like making excuses or trying to like we've all been BS'd by someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying that someone doesn't really know and they're trying to throw technical language to hide the fact that they've done a poor job. I'm saying if the channel actually isn't the problem, it's actually your responsibility to your client or to your business to help them see that by pointing them to actual success. What's actually going to solve it? The other business problem. I think the best way to think about this is to get some idea of what is the efficiency plateau that you can then communicate and visualize to your boss or client. A simple way to think about that is when have I hit the limit of performance that my channel can offer without an external influence? So I don't mean, hey, we need additional budget, change the offer, whatever, because that's outside of what you're doing. Even if you as a PPCer manage some of those things, that's not a technical PPC thing. That's an external influence that you need to communicate, right? So again, if you're hitting this efficiency plateau, which we'll talk about, and what you need is more budget, then you asking for more budget is the thing. You're not saying, hey, there's a problem with how this is being managed. What you're saying is, hey, this is going well. We need more budget in order to accomplish growth. And one of the easiest ways to do this is by visualizing, and sometimes there are these different charts or graphs that you can find within Google Ads, but visualizing to your CEO or C-suite, when have we reached the plateau where we cannot gain any additional performance without losing significant efficiency. So you might look at something like search impression share, and that's often what we see is like you'll hit maybe a 90% impression share. And what that means practically, and this is the sort of thing that I will shoot a Loom video and walk my clients through this. I'll try to help them see this so that they see the thing that I'm looking at, is to show the competition. Sometimes, show them auction insights, show them the impression share, walk them through what that is briefly, and then say, okay, so here's the problem. We are now at a $22 max CPC on average. And we're getting, this is just examples, but we're getting 8 conversions. In order to get 9 conversions, so one more sale, we would need to increase our CPC to $77 from $22. And, and then you can go into the math based on that client, based on that for one extra conversion, which, nets us an extra $500 of sales of profit, maybe even, we're spending $2,000 more, right? We've done as much work as we can to keep this cost low. We're running these different bidding model experiments where we're testing different things. We've tried switching from TROAS to TCPA. We're trying to tweak these things. And what we've found after 90 days of this is we just can't start getting over a $22 CPC and still convert that efficiently. So what that means, and then here's where you're moving into. So what you're saying is we've been doing all we can, and now there is a limit. There's a limit on the demand that we're capturing. So we have captured the demand given to us as efficiently as possible. That's why I call it the efficiency plateau. All right, let me say that again. We've captured the demand that's been handed to us. We've captured it as efficiently as possible. Therefore, the solution is not in figuring out the efficiency and spending endless time on the efficiency, which is looking at Google Ads for the technical problem. The solution is to look outside of Google Ads. So do you see the difference here? You're not saying, whoa, hey, this isn't Google Ads' problem. I don't know, man. I don't know what to do, but good luck figuring it out. You're saying, here is math to demonstrate that we are at the efficiency plateau. And so now what needs to happen is we need increased demand. So we need more people searching that we can capture at the same efficiency rate, okay? Or we need to increase conversion rate. So we need to sell to more of the people that we are already capturing. And both of those tend to be solutions that are outside of what a technical PPC marketer actually controls. Okay, so now we've talked about this. Be a good technical marketer and walk through the efficiency plateau. Let's say you've done this and you've even helped demonstrate like, hey, this is not a channel problem to your boss or CEO. Here's where it's tempting. And in some ways, like, I think it's a legitimate response for you as the PPCer to be like, hey, this isn't a channel problem. This isn't our PPC problem. I think that's actually fair. And in fact, within the scope of your arrangement, especially if you're charging a very low amount and you have that agreement, then this might be a good time for you to back away. But what I'd like to tell you is that you may actually increase your value and client retention, keep your job. If what you do is identify, hey, we're talking about this efficiency plateau, that means somewhere in the business has failed, right? Because at some point, something has failed, and then that has trickled down to you so that it's showing up in you being unable to be more efficient. If that's the case, to be a good C-suite whisperer, you know what they love? Is they love when you diagnose and help them see growth issues, and especially provide solutions. And we're going to talk about this a little bit because there's something I'm talking about here and there's something I'm not talking about here where you are getting out of your line, okay? So I think a good way to think about this would be, I try to aim at, with myself and my team, like 80% of our skill set is knowing our channel well. Like, I want us to know Google Ads really well, but I also want us to have an understanding of how our knowledge of Google Ads works into actual business growth through those other things, okay? The way that it's impacted by some of those other things we talked about, the product, the offer, positioning, top of funnel, stuff like that. So let me give you a couple of specific illustrations so you can kind of see what I mean, because what I'm suggesting now is not that you start doing all of this additional work beyond your scope. What I'm saying is get really good at identifying within the data that you have as a PPCer, get really good at identifying when that data is pointing you towards a specific growth problem outside of PPC, where you can help guide the executive to the right problem, so then they can work on a solution, okay? So you're not solving it for them, but you're helping narrow down where they need to solve. Because as a business owner or CEO, that's actually a huge part of the problem. Is a lot of times, like, there's a problem, but it could be like 400 different things, and being able to identify, oh, this is the actual thing preventing us growth, can allow you to solve that problem and prevent growth rather than invest your time somewhere over here where it doesn't matter. So here's an example of that. Here's an example of a time where we took, in my agency, ZATO, we took a specific PPC thing and we turned this into help guiding them of what was preventing growth. So we were working with a client and they had a product that was map pricing. And I'm going to move this because this is actually kind of a core part of my slide here. So map pricing, minimum advertised pricing, it means that a manufacturer has simply, as you can see right here, a manufacturer has simply set the price that you are allowed to sell the product at. And so what happened is, we're working with this client, things are going well. I think this was one of, if not their top selling product. And all of a sudden, like, their performance tanked. This was kind of like overnight. And it was like, so Google Ads performance was just down. All right. And so, as you've done many times as technical PPCer, you hop in just to see, like, what the heck is going on. And so we did all the things. Is this a conversion tracking issue? Whatever. We started digging in. Oh, okay, this is a Google shopping thing, right? We're narrowing it down. That's a lot of times what you're doing is you're just narrowing down, comparing date ranges, just trying to see where is the main source of the problem. We kept narrowing it down for Google shopping. Then finally we got to, oh, it's this one specific product. And so then we are kind of trying to determine, we're looking into that product. We're looking at change history. Do we adjust ROAS targets? All this stuff. So we're really trying to figure this out. And part of what we do as well often is just like go look at the SERP, the search engine result page, like this. This is a shopping example. And just like see what we see sometimes, right? Are we still showing up? What is that? And it was like, as soon as we looked at that and then started looking at some competitor PDPs, we realized, like, duh, we know exactly what the problem is. The problem is that one of our competitors, and this is not it, but this is a great example of what I mean. So I snagged this screenshot. One of our competitors was breaking map. It's called map busting is what I used to call it at a company that I worked at. And what this means is that they have made a calculation that they are willing to get on the manufacturer's bad side. This is not a legal thing. This is just the manufacturer agreement they have, because the manufacturer can choose not to sell this product to them anymore. And so they made a calculation to get on the manufacturer's bad side, drop the prices significantly by breaking MAP, and it had been successful. And of course, doggone it, all those consumers still clicked on our ads. So like, again, that's why performance dropped so much, is because we still were paying for the clicks, because for some reason people were like, oh, they have a sale, I wonder if they have a sale, right? And then they'd go back and purchase. So we still were paying for all these clicks, but like our conversion rate had dropped like a stone because of this. And so what this allowed us to do, so again, let me walk through what I'm talking about here. This is a PPC problem initially. Like phase one of this whole, like the great performance drop of this product. Phase one was, this is a PPC problem. Hey, we can see it on numbers. PPC has dropped. Please figure that out. What did you guys do, right? That's fair. So phase one is that. Phase two is us digging in, finding what the problem is. Phase three then is us communicating, here's the actual problem. It's a pricing problem. It's a map issue. And phase four then is the CEO and his team, his executive team, now they can solve the correct problem because we helped aim it at them using Google Ads data. We said, hey, this is a pricing problem. So now invest your energy and solutions into solving the pricing problem. And the reason this is so important is because if we had never gotten to phases 2 through 4, this would have just have seemed like a Google Ads performance problem. And even though my team is really great and we were doing a good job, we might have gotten fired because it just appeared to be a Google performance problem. So we might have gotten fired. That's us. The brand would have been injured. The brand would have failed to grow because they made the wrong solution, firing the agency, when that was not the actual problem and solution. Do you see? So what we're doing is we're using paid search or shopping ads in this instance, to then help guide the C-suite, whisper, if you will, to the right solution. Here's another example. Changing demand. Changing demand is a big one. Because, again, if we're talking primarily search and shopping ads, we are talking about, as we've been discussing, you're capturing demand efficiently. What that means is if you are working with a brand where there's a whole lot of demand being driven elsewhere, which it should be, frankly, there's a whole lot of demand being driven elsewhere, then you kind of need to be aware of when that changes. And so my biggest suggestion to you, and something we're starting to implement, more specifically with each of our clients, because we've been starting to have this issue on clients where in the past, especially as we got them in the past, and some of like our abilities and skills evolve just like everyone else's, right? And increasingly we're seeing this is such a crucial thing to have as a Google Ads agency. And that is that you get, let's just call it a spreadsheet where you manually enter the numbers, because screw AI and automation in this sort of thing. You need, if you are the one managing Google Ads on this account, I want you in there writing in those numbers by hand, because what it does is it gives your brain time to think and to make ties. That's actually one of the things AI, I think, is stealing from us, which is not good, is it's removing the time we used to have in pondering the stuff we're seeing, which also makes it more and more difficult to identify when AI is hallucinating. All that to say, getting back to the message at hand, what you want is a spreadsheet where you have total performance, so total revenue from your business. And then there's different levels of financial things you can get. But one of the simplest is just like, I want gross revenue on a weekly basis. I want to know what meta spend and meta revenue is. And I want Google Ads spend, Google Ads revenue. You might have a MER calculation, I think is always a good idea. A media efficiency ratio or marketing efficiency ratio, depending on whatever. And then, if you're running on AppLovin, whatever it might be. Sometimes I do think pulling YouTube out is very separate. I've been saying paid search and shopping. YouTube is its own animal. It is a demand driving entity, having that, so that you can start to see, what's going on here. So here's an example of what I mean by that, all right? This isn't something that we specifically did like the last example, but this is a good example. I actually shared this. I gave a keynote in Berlin at SMX Advanced where I was talking to both PPCers and SEOers. And I share this with the SEOers just to be like, yeah, I'm on your side too, SEO people, even as a PPCer. And that is, let's say you as an SEO let's say you have the spreadsheet and you're monitoring all this stuff. And let's say the CEO emails you, at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is never a good time. If you receive an email from the CEO at 3 a.m., I can guarantee you 98% of the time it is not a good news email. It's not an attaboy, all right? So let's say you receive that and it's like, whoa, I've really been watching the trend of the last couple months and Google Organic is really struggling. I'm not sure why. Can you look into this? Has there been a core update? Whatever the SEO stuff is. Has AI taken over, right? Whatever the SEO thing is that the CEO will ask you. And here's what I shared with them. Like, let's say you have access to this spreadsheet and you're monitoring, you're like, whoa, that's interesting. Like Google Ads revenue increases. Google Ads revenue increased very similarly to the revenue we lost. And it was almost at the exact same time. Well, that's weird, right? You start to see these trends. So then let's say you, the SEO, hop in there. Maybe you even have access to Google Ads, which I think is probably a good idea just as an SEO, because then you can dig in and run keyword research and stuff like that, by the way. And absolutely your Google Ads should be connected to Search Console. But all that to say, you dig in and you're like, oh, this new agency that the CEO hired, they created like a couple of brand campaigns that were not running before that are just getting all of these sales from organic terms that we owned, like from all these long tail organic terms that we owned. And basically they're like all they're doing is shifting sales from organic to PPC. I'm not even like, they were coming over from free before, yeah, the PPC agencies should probably shut those off, frankly. But I won't even tell you which of those things should happen, right? I think it's just one of those, like, if the CEO is on board with those new brand campaigns being run, maybe there's an incrementality argument or whatever, that's fair. But then do you see what I'm saying? Then the expectations need to change on the SEO brand as far as the decrease in revenue. Obviously, the decrease in revenue happened because of this new brand campaign test you're running, which, cool. If you don't want to pause that, that's fair. But then this is not a decrease in revenue. This is a shift of revenue. And because you kept an eye on changing demand, you're able to identify that sort of thing. All right. So this idea of diagnosing the growth bottleneck and then being able to communicate that solution. And I think that this is the way to go because at the end of the day, no amount of channel optimization can ever fix a product that doesn't connect with its audience. And I really hope that this message gets across. And in fact, I joked about this, but like, I almost want to start a movement. I think this is something that is not understood in our industry, really in some ways by agencies or by clients or brands. Like, I think the C-suite struggles to understand what level of contribution to growth individual channels actually offer. And so that really is one step, is just the awareness of this. And that's kind of the purpose of this talk, is in some ways like to raise awareness. Like you need to be aware of, especially on capturing demand channels like PPC, I think SEO falls into that. What are the contributions and therefore what are the limitations of its ability to contribute to growth, right? So then you're not requiring SEO or PPC to get somewhere or to provide growth that it's just not able to do. Because what happens when you do that is that you oftentimes end up firing good people because you're looking at them saying, hey, I always liked this person, but we're just not getting the growth from them that we expected. So let's try to see if someone else has figured it out, because you've not identified the actual solution to growth. Yeah, you need to provide a product that doesn't suck or whatever it might be. So I hope that helps. Definitely, if you haven't, definitely pick up this green Ponderings of a PPC Professional. If you speak in Spanish, I have a Spanish. I was thinking if you speak in Spanish and not English, then this might have been a confusing talk to follow. But regardless, I do have one in Spanish if that's your preference to read, or Italian as well. And by the way, Gabriel Benedetti is the one who translated my Italian version. And I got to meet him for the first time this last week in Bologna. And that was amazing. Yeah, it was just kind of fun. We'd never met before and we just gave each other a big hug. And then he took me to like the best lasagna I'd ever had with some people. And we just chatted, and just such a great dude. And so he's the one who translated. So that was kind of fun to use him. So let me know if you have questions. I hope this was helpful. Let's join the movement so that we can all aim at what contributes to actual growth from here on out. Thanks so much. See ya.